Jacob came across something odd right in the middle of his cornfield. Inside a small burrow, he spotted a strange bunch of eggs. As he reached down for a closer look, something about them made him uneasy. The eggs didn't look like anything he recognized. The shape and feel were all wrong. Not wasting a moment, Jacob quickly pulled out his phone and called the local vet's office. He just wanted answers. But what he got was far more than he expected. "Good morning. This is the Green Veterinary Office. How can I help you today?" a voice answered on the other end. Jacob froze for a second. How was he supposed to describe this? And to think it had all appeared in his cornfield of all places. He had never come across anything like this before. Once he finished explaining everything to the woman on the phone, there was a pause. "Are you sure, sir? Are you certain those are the kind of eggs you think they are?" she asked carefully. A flash of memory hit Jacob, something from his childhood. He'd seen eggs like this once before. "I'm sure," he replied firmly. "Animal control is on the way," the woman said. Her tone had changed. She clearly understood this might be serious. Still, Jacob couldn't stop thinking. How did these eggs end up here? Where was the mother? And worst of all, what if they hatched right here in the middle of his field? Jacob had never pictured himself as anything but a farmer. It was in his blood. His dad had done it, and his grandfather before that. That's why when he said he'd never seen anything like this, he meant it. No exaggeration. He'd been walking through his wide cornfield, checking if the crops were close to harvest. He didn't want to rush it if they weren't ready. Over the years, he'd seen all sorts of things during his routine walks, just keeping an eye on how the land was doing. But this was something else entirely. He'd dealt with plenty, bird nests, molehills, but nothing like this. That's why he'd nearly lost his balance, almost falling face first when the ground suddenly shifted beneath him. He'd nearly crushed them without even realizing. A shallow burrow had tripped him up, almost sending him toppling. When he finally noticed the eggs tucked inside, he took an exaggerated step forward, careful not to damage anything. Sure, no wild animal should be nesting in his field, but that didn't mean he wanted to destroy anything. Still, one big question kept nagging at him. What kind of animal would lay its eggs here of all places? After tripping, Jacob found himself sitting right next to the little burrow. Taking a closer look, he realized that a few of the eggs were already broken, completely empty. Maybe they weren't supposed to be buried at all, or maybe some animal had dug them up, leaving them exposed like this. He couldn't quite figure it out. Still, something about them looked familiar. These weren't your usual eggs, and Jacob was certain he'd never seen them on his farm before. But something in the back of his mind sparked. A memory from long ago. He thought back to a childhood trip to the zoo with his grandparents, the last one they ever took together. He had been fascinated by the animals. Could it really be possible that one of those creatures had laid eggs right here? His memory might not have been perfect, but it felt clear to him. And now, looking at the ones in front of him, Jacob felt almost completely sure. That's when he knew what he needed to do. He grabbed his phone. Since plenty of animals lived around his farm, Jacob had the Green Veterinary Office saved in his contacts. As he pressed the call button, he waited for Vanessa to pick up. She was usually the one who answered, young, friendly, and always helpful. But now Jacob wasn't even sure how to explain this. Would she believe him? "Good morning, the Green Veterinary Office speaking. What can I help you with today?" Vanessa's cheerful voice came through the line. Jacob cleared his throat. "Hey, Vanessa, it's Jacob. I know I've called before with some odd animal stuff, but this time I've come across something really strange." As Jacob explained what he'd found and what he thought it might be, Vanessa stayed quiet, listening carefully. "Are you really sure about this?" she finally asked, her voice not quite as steady as before. Jacob nodded instinctively, even though she couldn't see him. "Yes, I'm as sure as I can be. Those eggs match what I remember." He heard her whispering to someone nearby, likely with her hand over the phone. "Jacob, we'll head over to your farm right away. Please stay with the eggs. Your presence might keep other animals away. We'll be there in about 15 minutes. Jacob hoped they'd finally give him some real answers. He didn't have to wait long. Soon he heard the sound of a car pulling into his driveway. Hidden deep in the tall corn, Jacob knew they wouldn't be able to see him. He raised the hoe he'd brought along and waved it in the air to help them spot where he was. Looking down again at the eggs, he didn't realize yet. This was just the beginning of what was to come. As the early morning light filtered through the cornstalks, Jacob watched Dr. Morgan speaking quickly into his phone. The dew still clung to the leaves, and the calm of the morning was broken only by the urgency in the vet's voice. Normally calm and soft-spoken, Dr. Morgan sounded different now, serious. Jacob stood back, trying to catch pieces of the conversation. "Yes, it's very unusual. No, I've never seen anything quite like this," Dr. Morgan said. He was talking to Dr. Lisa Hammond, a local expert who dealt with rare wildlife cases. Jacob's heart thudded in his chest. He'd always felt his land had its share of mysteries. But this? This was something else entirely. By mid-morning, Dr. Hammond pulled up in a rush, her jeep kicking up dust as it sped toward the cornfield. She stepped out with purpose, energy in every move, and her eyes locked instantly on the strange eggs. Slipping on a pair of gloves, she gently picked up and examined each one, quietly sharing thoughts with Dr. Morgan. They tossed around ideas, maybe a rare bird, maybe some kind of reptile. Jacob stayed close, trying to hear bits of what they were saying. The egg's unusual look and feel had clearly captured Dr. Hammond's attention, just like it had his. As the sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the rows of corn, Dr. Hammond began unpacking some high-tech gear. A small ultrasound machine came to life with a steady hum, its screen lighting up with faint images inside the eggs. Jacob watched closely as the two vets leaned over it, pointing things out and talking in terms he couldn't follow. They measured and took notes, focused and absorbed in their work. Jacob couldn't help but stare, more curious now than ever. Whatever these eggs were, they were turning out to be more than anyone expected. As the day wore on, more theories were thrown around. Dr. Morgan wondered if a bird had drifted off its migration path, while Dr. Hammond considered if this could be a native species that had never been documented. They talked about the environment, past sightings, and anything that might explain it. Jacob listened to what he could catch, feeling a little thrill run through him. Each theory seemed more incredible than the last. He even started coming up with his own ideas, none of which sounded any less strange. As the sun began to set, casting the cornfield in a warm, golden light, the experts dug deeper into technical details, mentioning genes, habitat needs, and other things way over Jacob's head. He just stood there, thinking hard. What were these eggs? Why here, and why now? The whole thing had wrapped itself around his mind. He didn't have any answers, only more questions. And as the sky darkened and night fell over the land, the eggs just sat there quietly, full of mystery. The next morning, the peaceful hum of the farm was broken by the sudden arrival of local news crews. Vans rolled up with big logos on the sides, and people poured out with cameras and microphones. Reporters rushed toward the field, asking questions left and right. Jacob hadn't expected this and stood frozen as his quiet life turned into a whirlwind. He noticed Dr. Morgan and Dr. Hammond exchange a quick, uneasy look. Things had definitely changed now. The media didn't waste a second. Headlines exploded with dramatic titles, some more far-fetched than others. One called it "Mystery in the Cornfield, Farmer's Shocking Find." Another hinted at aliens. The farm was suddenly filled with wild guesses and non-stop chatter. Standing in the middle of it all, Jacob felt torn. Part of him was proud, sure, but another part felt overwhelmed. His quiet cornfield had become the center of something way bigger than he could have imagined. News of Jacob's discovery spread fast through town. Neighbors and curious locals started showing up, gathering in small groups and swapping theories. Some thought the eggs might be from prehistoric times, maybe even dinosaurs. Others, more playfully, guessed they could be dragon eggs. The guesses got more creative as the crowd grew. Jacob stood by, both amused and confused by it all. His quiet farm had suddenly turned into a place full of excitement. As the hours passed, Jacob's emotions bounced back and forth between pride and worry. His farm had always been his pride and joy, something steady and peaceful in his life. Now it was the focus of all kinds of attention, and for something he never saw coming. While he appreciated people's interest, he couldn't help but feel uneasy. Strangers walked through his fields, cameras were everywhere, and the calm he was used to had vanished. Deep down, he missed the quiet that used to be part of every day. By the week's end, things had reached a new level. Bigger media outlets rolled in, each one chasing the most dramatic version of the story. Drones flew overhead, filming the land from above, and live interviews popped up on screens across the country. Experts weighed in, adding to the buzz. Somehow, Jacob's simple farmland had become a national spotlight, and the strange eggs now symbolized a mystery everyone wanted to solve. In the middle of it all stood Jacob, still unsure what to make of any of it, yet fully at the center of it. Not long after, people from the local university came by. They had a formal offer and seemed genuinely interested in the scientific value of the eggs. They talked about research and discovery and how much could be learned. It caught Jacob's interest, but he also hesitated. This was his farm, his home, and his work. The idea of it being turned into a research site made him nervous. It was a lot to take in. Soon after that, an environmental group reached out. Their focus was on the bigger picture, protecting the eggs and whatever they might become. They talked about biodiversity and the importance of conservation. Jacob listened carefully. He'd always cared for his land and tried to do what was right. Their passion made sense to him. But even with that, he wasn't sure if turning his land into a protected site was the best move. All of it began to weigh on him. Different people offered advice, each with a strong opinion. The university wanted access for science. The conservation group wanted to protect the area. And then there was Jacob's own wish, to keep the farm as it had always been. At night, sleep didn't come easy. He found himself lying awake, thinking about what to do. Every option felt big, and none of them came without cost. Tensions started to rise as the groups pushed harder. Arguments broke out, sometimes right in front of him. Everyone seemed to think their plan was best. The media only made things worse, putting these debates in the spotlight and drawing even more attention. Jacob felt like he was being pulled in every direction, trapped in a situation that had spun out of control. Through all the noise and pressure, Jacob knew one thing for sure. He had to make a decision. He thought hard about it all: the science, the land, the meaning of this discovery. His family's legacy, his duty to the farm, and now this unexpected responsibility. It all mattered. Whatever he chose, it would shape more than just what happened to the eggs. It would shape his future and the future of the place he called home. One night, as the farm lay quiet under the stars, Jacob noticed something that sent a jolt through him. Figures moving near the edge of the property. The way they crept in the dark made his stomach tighten. He suddenly realized that theft or worse could be a real threat now. With so many people valuing those eggs, someone might try to take them. Jacob didn't hesitate. Whatever happened next, protecting those eggs had to come first. Wanting to keep the eggs safe, Jacob wasted no time stepping up security around the farm. He added floodlights, set up surveillance cameras, and even extended the fencing. He got in touch with local security companies to ask for advice and extra help. The place that once welcomed anyone now looked more like a heavily guarded property. Jacob knew it was necessary, but he couldn't help feeling a little sadness for the simpler days he'd always loved. It didn't take long for the extra security to prove its worth. More suspicious people were seen near the edges of the farm, lurking just out of reach. It looked like word had spread to the wrong kinds of people, those interested in the eggs for all the wrong reasons. Jacob's land had become a magnet for trouble, and the pressure was growing fast. Jacob began to take on a whole new role. He was no longer just tending crops, he was patrolling the land like a watchman. Every day was about staying alert, keeping a close eye on anything unusual. His nights were restless, his mind running through what-ifs. The quiet farmer had turned into a round-the-clock protector of something precious, something he hadn't asked for but had come to care about deeply. One night, the danger got very real. Jacob saw a group trying to sneak onto the farm. Thanks to his quick reaction and the security systems he'd put in place, they didn't get far. The scare shook him. It was proof that real threats were out there. But instead of backing down, Jacob felt even more committed. Whatever it took, he'd protect what was now a part of his life. Things took another turn when Jacob received a formal legal notice early one morning. A stern-faced official handed it to him, orders from authorities and conservation groups to relocate the eggs for study and safety. The letter was full of official language, cold and impersonal. But to Jacob, it felt personal. These eggs had become part of his story, and the idea of someone taking them away stung deeply. Not willing to give up, Jacob reached out for legal help. He found Ms. Evelyn Briggs, a lawyer known for her work in land and environmental law. She listened closely to everything he shared, her expression thoughtful but firm. They talked through his rights and what options he had. For the first time in days, Jacob felt a flicker of hope. Ms. Briggs was ready to fight alongside him. Word of Jacob's legal fight quickly spread, and people rallied around him. Neighbors, friends, and even folks he barely knew stepped up with offers of help. Some started fundraisers, others passed around petitions. The outpouring of support took Jacob by surprise. Their kindness reminded him he wasn't alone in this, that the community believed in him and what he was doing. A key win came when the court granted a temporary hold on moving the eggs. It gave Jacob a breather, some time to regroup. Ms. Briggs warned him the legal battle was far from over, but for now the eggs would stay. As Jacob walked out of the courthouse, he felt a mix of emotions, grateful for the win, but fully aware the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Even though the court had given him a bit of breathing room, Jacob knew the fight was far from over. He spent long days working with Ms. Briggs, going over plans and getting ready for the next round of hearings. By now, it wasn't just about the eggs anymore. It was about standing firm for what he believed was right. Jacob had made up his mind. No matter how long or difficult this got, he wasn't giving up. One morning, during his usual walk around the farm, Jacob spotted something that made his heart race. Fresh footprints near the cornfield, partially brushed away like someone had tried to hide them. They led straight toward the area where the eggs were buried. Anger mixed with fear in his chest. It was clear now, this wasn't just about interest or curiosity. There were people out there who wanted to take the eggs for themselves. Thankfully, Jacob's security upgrades and quick reaction kept things from going any further. The intruders ran off before they could get too close. Still, the close call shook him. It added even more weight to everything going on. This wasn't just a strange discovery, it had become something much bigger. And protecting it had become part of who Jacob was now. When word got out about the attempted break-in, the community's support grew stronger than ever. People showed up with tools, food, even offers to take shifts keeping watch. It was like the whole town had taken this on with him. Their kindness and determination reminded Jacob that he wasn't standing alone. Together, they were doing something that mattered. After the break-in, the local police stepped in more seriously. Officers came by more often, and detectives opened an investigation. While Jacob was thankful for the extra help, the constant presence of law enforcement reminded him how much things had changed. The farm used to be his quiet escape, a place for simple work and quiet days. Now it felt like the center of something way too big. Wanting to stay ahead of any threats, Jacob kept adding to the farm's security. He put in more cameras, added motion detectors, and even thought about hiring private guards. Every step reminded him of how far things had come. He wasn't just growing corn anymore, he was guarding something rare and unknown. His life had taken a sharp turn, and he was doing everything he could to keep up. The story of Jacob and the eggs was no longer just local news. National outlets picked it up, each putting their own spin on what had happened. The eggs, once something only the town whispered about, were now being talked about across the country. Jacob watched the coverage with mixed emotions, amazed that his small farm had caught such attention, but also overwhelmed by it all. That attention brought crowds with it. Reporters, photographers, and curious folks drove in from miles away. Cars lined the roads and people crowded near the fences, all hoping to catch a glimpse of the mysterious eggs. Jacob stood back and watched, barely believing how fast everything had changed. His peaceful farm was now buzzing with voices, questions, and flashing cameras, far from the life he once knew. As the media storm grew, Jacob's sense of privacy faded more each day. Reporters stayed camped out along the edges of his land, drones hovered constantly, and it felt like every step he took was being watched. What used to be normal daily routines now felt like scenes in a public show. Cameras and microphones were everywhere, and the peaceful life he once had seemed like a distant memory. The steady stream of visitors brought new challenges. It wasn't just about keeping the eggs safe anymore. Jacob now had to manage crowds too. People wandered close to the fields, trying to get a glimpse. To keep things under control, Jacob put up barriers, posted signs, and started directing folks away from certain areas. Every change was a tough call, keeping things safe while trying not to push people away completely. In the middle of it all, Jacob felt like he was standing in the center of a storm. Everything he did seemed to be picked apart, judged, questioned, even criticized. But through all the noise and pressure, he stayed focused on what mattered most: protecting the eggs. The farm no longer felt like his own, but he stood firm, caught in the chaos, yet unwilling to give up. Things started to shift when a well-known environmental activist came to visit. She spoke with real heart about what the eggs meant, how they reminded us of nature's beauty, and how easily it could be lost. Her words hit home for a lot of people, and when her message aired on TV and online, everything started to feel different. People began seeing the eggs not just as a mystery, but as something truly worth protecting. Motivated by her message, a peaceful protest was organized right there on the farm. People from all over showed up with signs, showing their support and calling for the eggs to be protected. It was calm but powerful, nothing like the wild attention from before. As Jacob looked across the field full of people united in purpose, he felt something shift inside. This wasn't chaos, it was community. The protest and the activists' influence started to turn the tide. The story stopped being about odd eggs in a cornfield and became something bigger, about conservation, responsibility, and standing up for the natural world. People began to understand that the eggs weren't just strange, they were special. For Jacob, it felt like hope was finally replacing the tension. With public opinion swinging his way, the town's support for Jacob grew stronger. It wasn't just polite words anymore. His neighbors were behind him fully. They stood with him, not just as friends, but as one voice pushing back against pressure from outside. That unity gave Jacob strength. He felt less like a lone farmer and more like a man with a whole town at his back. Thanks to the outpouring of support, Jacob found himself in a better position during talks with authorities and conservation groups. Where before he had felt cornered, now he had real backing. Public support gave him a seat at the table and a say in what happened next. But to Jacob, it wasn't about power. It was about shared purpose and protecting something bigger than himself. Then came the moment everyone had been waiting for. The air was quiet, full of anticipation, as the first signs of hatching appeared. Jacob stood among the crowd, neighbors, scientists, reporters, all holding their breath. Tiny cracks spread across the shells, the buildup of everything they'd all gone through finally reaching its peak. Everyone knew they were about to see something rare. A hush fell as the first little turtle broke through the shell. It blinked, wet and blinking under the sun, and the crowd gasped. One by one, more turtles emerged, fragile, slow, and full of life. People smiled and whispered in awe. Jacob watched it all, a deep feeling settling in his chest. The long, exhausting road had led to this, a quiet, perfect moment of wonder. Experts on the scene quickly confirmed what many had suspected. The turtles were a species never before documented in the area. Their rarity only added to the growing excitement. Cameras flashed as photographers captured their very first moments. Around Jacob, people buzzed with talk about what this could mean for science and the environment. Standing in the middle of it all, Jacob felt a quiet, deep pride settle in his chest. Biologists and conservationists were quick to highlight just how important the hatching was. They praised Jacob for the role he played in protecting the eggs and helping bring this discovery to light. What had started as just another farming season had turned into something incredible. His land wasn't just for growing crops anymore. It had become a place of ecological importance. The recognition he received from the science community was something Jacob never expected, but truly appreciated. The local community and media soon began calling Jacob a hero. His story, from stumbling on the eggs to seeing the turtles hatch, became a tale people admired. His steady effort and quiet care stood out, especially in the face of so many challenges. Jacob had never imagined being seen as anything more than a farmer, but now he was known as someone who protected something truly rare, and he took on that role with humble pride. After the hatching, something remarkable happened. Officials, environmental groups, and the local community came together and made a decision. Jacob's farm would become a protected conservation site. It was a turning point, not just for the land, but for everyone involved. The farm's future now included a mission to protect these turtles, and that plan had Jacob's name at the heart of it. Jacob partnered closely with environmental specialists to create a safe space for the turtles. Together, they found a way to blend the sanctuary with his farming life. New ponds were built, natural plants were encouraged to grow, and care was taken to let both nature and farming thrive side by side. It was the beginning of something new, something that felt right. As changes took shape, the farm became more than just a success story. It became an example. Crops grew alongside a thriving turtle habitat, each part of the land supporting the other. Visitors now came to see not just the turtles, but also how Jacob had balanced farming with protecting wildlife. His land was proof that both could exist together in harmony. Jacob's hard work and quiet determination didn't just help the turtles, it sparked something bigger. The community began to change too. Local schools started bringing kids to the farm, where they learned about conservation and the importance of protecting the world around them. Jacob's story became a lesson, not just in farming or nature, but in the power of care and commitment. Now, as the story of Jacob's farm draws to a close, its future is brighter than ever. It stands as a peaceful place where crops grow and wildlife flourishes, a symbol of balance and respect for the natural world. The story of the eggs and the turtles lives on, inspiring others to think differently about what's possible. And Jacob, standing on the land he's always loved, looks ahead with quiet hope, grateful, proud, and ready for whatever comes next. If this story inspired you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with others. Let Jacob's journey remind us all that one person, with heart, courage, and a little help from their community, can protect something truly special.